Consent?
I'll take the lead.
Whatever you want to do.
Welcome. Special budget meeting Tuesday, August 23rd, 2016. I'd like to call this meeting to order. Would you please stand and say the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
City Clerk, if we could have the roll call, please.
Thank you, Mayor. Commissioner Baldini,
Present.
Commissioner Conbenzi,
Here.
Commissioner Conley,
Here.
Commissioner Frazier,
Yep.
Commissioner Plurd, Mayor Pro Tem Reynolds,
Here.
Mayor Campana.
Here. Do we have a motion for Commissioner Plord, who is not here today? Pro Tem Reynolds?
I move we excuse Commissioner Plord because of work purposes.
Is there a second? Commissioner Baldini?
Support.
Comments? None? All those in favor, say yes.
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 Opposed? That passes 6-0. Do we have a motion to approve the agenda for today? Commissioner Frazier?
Make a motion to approve the agenda as written.
Would there be a second? Commissioner Baldini?
Support.
All those in favor say yes.
Yes.
Opposed? That carries 6-0. Announcements? I have none today. Next is our first public comment. Public comment is a time when citizens may address the commission. I'm going to open public comment. Does anybody wish to address the commission? Anybody? Anyone? Seeing none, we're going to close public comment. We're going to move to the consent agenda. Would there be a motion to approve the consent agenda? Motion somewhere? Commissioner Frazier?
I make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Would there be a second? Commissioner Cambenzi?
Support.
Comments? Any? None? All those in favor say yes.
Yes.
Opposed? That carries 6-0. Next we come to new business. This would be our budget discussion for today. We'll start off with, would the city manager want to start it off? Chief Financial Officer, Gary.
Thank you. First of all, thank you all for being here. We realize a lot of you have jobs and other activities, and this takes out from your schedule, but we really appreciate you participating and being here. This is the third of 4 scheduled budget sessions. Today's focus is mostly on infrastructure type activities. So that involve community development, which is Dennis's area, and then public works utilities, which is Kurt's area. So with that, we'll let Dennis take it off. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, is this on? Can you hear me? Good morning, Mayor, Commissioners. Today we will quickly run through community development budget as best as we can, so we'll leave you some time for questions. I'd like to start off like I do every year and take this opportunity to thank the staff of the Community Development Department. As I always say, they're probably the most underappreciated people, most likely because they take money from people and tell them what they can and can't do with their property or review their plans for them, which doesn't necessarily set up for a great symbiotic relationship with the community, but it is very important. The tasks that they do often go unseen. Our engineering department, as we speak right now, there probably isn't a key left on the wall. All the trucks are out and everybody's standing in a trench somewhere inspecting a utility that's being constructed on behalf of the city or reviewing a street project. The ones that are left in the office are probably designing something for the Downtown Development Authority or for the DLP project or one of our main projects that we have coming up next year. Our zoning staff are consistently busy approving permits, weeding through an old 78 Cadillac of zoning ordinance and trying to be helpful to people so that we can continue to have development in the community. And we also deal with economic development through our strategic development function, which is primarily myself acting along with the city manager, spearheading economic development planning, and also Gary coordinating with the LDFA and the Smart Zone. Those things are often overlooked because of those other agencies too. So there's a lot of things that are done in the dark in our department, but yet they're very important to the community, and without our staff, we could not do that. I'd like to start out today, we'll look at the engineering department first. I will start out with the fee schedule, which is on page 26 of your budget. I'll note that on the engineering department fee schedule, there are a couple of minimal increases, and it's directly related to the cost of the data products. So we have, when we speak of individual data products, we talk about basically our shape files and things on the GIS digital type of data. And along with that, there is a minimal cost of, it looked like it went up $1.40 per data unit this year. So minimal increase, along with our, if we move down to our special assessment fees, if we were to get into special assessments, street paving, water mains, and sewer mains, there was a minimal increase in that as well, with the expectation of increase in actual construction costs should anyone want a special assessment. And then the permit fees for street openings, curb cuts, sidewalk obstructions, house moving, so on. There were minimal $2 to $3 increases in those as well. So, are there any questions on the fee schedule for engineering? If not, I'll move on.
Just a quick comment about the special assessments. People never seem to kind of grasp that they have to pay for part of some of that, whether they want water mains or something done beyond the right of way. Is there any way to help put that out there better?
Generally, when our city engineer has contact with a resident that may be interested in improvement, he does explain the special assessment process to them, and he will give them an estimate, and then they will take it back to their neighbors and decide if they want to do it. I think what has generally been the procedure through most of the special assessments that I've been experienced in 17 years is that unless there's a lot of neighborhood support, we don't see them come before the commission. And when we do see them come before the commission, there generally is some pretty significant savings on behalf of the residents. So I don't know, given the history, it's generally one of those things where we try to be the front line and educate them. But I think what really happens is it may be one person on the street or so that has an idea about it, and they generally can't garner the support of the rest of the neighborhood. Do you have anything to add to that?
That's pretty much it right there.
Question about the sidewalk obstruction fee. Is that's a one-time fee if you're blocking a sidewalk, or is it, I thought when I did some construction a few years back, I had to pay per day.
It's not a per day.
No.
If it's a continual obstruction, if it could be a week or a month, it's just one fee. Let's say if you're there for a week, you pull up, come back a month later and do it again, then you'd have a separate fee. But it's depends on how long you're there, if it's in continuum. So it's one fee, but that's per event.
And is there any place else, city clerk's budget, that somebody has to pay per day to block a sidewalk?
Now, this is for work. This would be for any construction work, or say that they had to block a sidewalk for a moving company or something like that. This would be the permit. The clerk's office permit, I believe, deals with like a sidewalk cafe or some type of commerce use on the sidewalk.
Okay, so the per diem is that fee is gone? Because this was 7 or 8 years ago.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
If there are no further questions, I'll move on to page 88, which is the summary sheet for the engineering department. And, you know, very briefly, I'll just go over, like I said, our engineers are very busy. They are responsible for inspection of all public utility work. We have our own surveyor, so we survey, design, prepare plans, conduct inspection, review, and we manage the capital improvement project. We provide technical review and permitting on all private development that is going to occur in the city and require connection to city utilities and streets. Our city engineer did an excellent job updating and creating basically a brand new capital improvement plan through a pretty lengthy and robust process. We provide surveying and drafting services for all other departments. In particular, if departments need grants and they need legal descriptions and so on, we go and provide those for them. As well, the Geographical Information System, or GIS, the main city mapping function, comes out of this department. And Matt Koss is our GIS technician, who's kind of responsible for the entire city and coordinating with information systems on that. And then, of course, we are liaisons to many agencies, MDOT for our small urban program, which brings us funding for maintenance on our streets and so on. And as of the past couple of years, we've kind of become the engineering arm of the Downtown Development Authority, where we will design and oversee some of their projects for a cost from the DDA. So we act as if we were a primary consultant for them from time to time. As we go through the next couple of pages, you'll look at the authorized positions and some of the program statistics. These statistics kind of match up with our capital improvements program. And then we will land on page 91, which is the expenditures for the engineering department in the upcoming fiscal year. I would really only note 3 line items here. We are dealing with a line item on account 775, which is our repair and maintenance supplies. There's a little bit of an increase there because we need to update some of our GIS and survey equipment and perform some maintenance on them. Our professional and contractual, we've reduced that by about $50,000 this year, but we are requesting a minimum of $20,000 for contingency on roundabout design. And that would be for the Wright Street project on the Lundeen corridor. When we redesign that, we are looking to construct modern roundabouts at the intersection of Sugarloaf and Wright Street, and also Lincoln and Wright Street. And then an improved entryway into our municipal new service center. We have good engineers, but when we're dealing with roundabouts, we'd like to have some contingency in there in case there's a design issue that we may need to bounce off of a consultant that designs those on a daily basis. So we estimate that to be about $20,000 if needed. I also believe some of that may be tied to some of the Lundeen funds as well. And in our transportation, which is line item 860, we would note there's a little bit of a decrease in there, recognizing some of the budget challenges. We've done some shifting in allocations of professional development for some of our staff. So that's our expenditures in a nutshell. Are there any questions for Keith or I?
Question. I obviously saw the reduction there, $50,000 in contractual services, and assuming, but should we be cautious about that one? And might we need the money? I mean, there's a lot going on in town.
I'll take first stab at that in that we did have a concern with the capital improvements plan. With the number of items that are being done, we're probably at max bandwidth with that. So we had kind of capped what we would be able to support along with that. But generally, this funding kind of comes along for the unseen stuff that you might need as a contingency, and I would kind of have to defer to Keith on that.
Dennis is correct in that. Basically, it's just, we need oversight on, like he had discussed earlier with the roundabouts. That's not our expertise, so we may not need it, but if we do, we have money there to have a firm like DLZ have some oversight in our roundabout design just to make sure we're on track. We're actually getting, my one engineer in the office is actually getting pretty good at it, so, but just in case, we have something there for
And
oversight.
then the other roundabouts that we anticipate coming to the city because of the hospital, those are state and other funds and,
Those are being,
Yes.
yeah, those are being designed by a consultant, DLZ.
And over time, this account, we generally ask for what we anticipate we'll need. I mean, one year it was up to 100,000, but then one year we only used $1,700. So an estimation this year, 20,000 would be sufficient for the roundabout oversight.
thank you.
As we speak of roundabouts and hospitals, there's been at least some theorizing about a roundabout on McClellan at Baraga. Would that be down the road if that were to happen?
The plans that are in the environmental assessment at McClellan and Baraga are for an island design with a right turn only coming off of Baraga. At this time, we're not anticipating a roundabout for some time. That also includes, as part of that project, there's gonna be dedicated left turn lanes and arrows at the signal timing on Washington and McClellan. So the plan right now is not for a roundabout in that area.
Okay.
There'd be some significant right-of-way challenges at this point in time.
It got tossed about when we were talking about the four choices.
Right, it was.
Okay.
But as it's kind of fleshed itself out through the design, that's actually why we have the cones there now, testing the right turn out. It's pretty much gonna be constructed like that.
Which is good. It's work. I use that intersection a lot. It really has improved it.
Thank you.
Can I, let me just put a comment in here. It may not be germane to this discussion, but I was asked about coming across US 41 into the city and a bike path. We have the bike path, obviously, along our street, but somebody was indicating, and I spoke with the city manager, and he got back to me and said there's really no room there. And I'm just wondering if we're gonna get into long-term planning there, if we start looking, I don't know where you'd find the room, but other than creating it, but.
I'd be happy to answer that briefly. We are working with MDOT. MDOT is programming a crossing in 2017. Next year. They've programmed some funding for an improved crossing with signals for pedestrians. One of the things that we will be looking at in the future is a potential tie-in there. We've actually internally have a very loose concept design for a tunnel at that location. And of course, funding becomes the challenge for that type of infrastructure, but most certainly that would be the best way to accomplish what you're considering there.
Thank you.
Dennis got a question. Just an update, and I don't want to take away from what you're doing here. The Baraga and McClellan intersection, there's a road, the exit road, entry road for public service garages right there. What is going to happen to that road? Because people can go, left turn, right turn onto that road, but you can't do a left turn onto the Baraga Street. I mean, are they eventually going to close that, or are they going to reroute it?
Well, that's a private driveway, and that was previously permitted, and it wouldn't be underneath our jurisdiction at this time to make any changes to that. That would purely be
It's
a
up to them.
decision of Public Service Garage.
Okay. That road is more dangerous than the intersection, so. Okay.
If there are any further questions on engineering expenditures?
Just a quick question, on the Lundin money, I guess, so with the roundabouts, on Wright Street, those would come solely from that Lundin money, or are we gonna have to put in some?
It would be funded by Lundin.
In looking at, the cost of a roundabout versus a traditional intersection, do we have enough to at least redo the roads? I guess from the city line coming in off of 550 all the way through to the township.
That is part of future programmed improvements in the capital improvement plan. I can't speak to the source of funding at this time. I know that we will be using several years of the Lundin money to pay for the roundabout in the Wright Street project.
Okay, I know that when we were negotiating with them, we negotiated a price per year, but it is short of what we would need to redo that entire stretch of road. So I guess,
Well, yeah, we get a certain amount of money per year, and I think the plan for the current roundabout project is our CFO and their CFO are working out an opportunity to front a couple of years of the money to be able to do that. Or the alternative would be to bond the project and then pay off the bond with the proceeds that come in on a yearly basis from Lundin.
I guess the other question I have is last year, we approved a snowplow truck out of that fund for that route. Now this year, looking at our capital improvement projects we want to look at, I'm just wondering if it wouldn't be best to maybe look at that list again and try and not touch this Lundin money as much as possible to make sure that it is used for the road. I guess that's my thought in going forward on this.
Say something real quick. Just an update as far as what we're trying to accomplish along the Lundin route there. We are doing some work on 550 from the township line towards the Dead River Bridge this year, mill and overlay, so that's going to be done this year. There's also some additional work being done on Sugarloaf from Holly Street to about Tourist Park, another mill and overlay. And then, as you know, we're doing Wright Street next year. There are plans for some additional mill and overlay from Ontario to the city limits line either next year or in a couple of years also. So we have some type of a program there, what we need to get accomplished to get that taken care of as far as the
We also have that, we also have a corridor safety plan that was done by DLZ, and we follow that when using the funding. It has it laid out on, it's kind of like a capital improvements plan, more or less, for the Lundin area.
So we're not doing a complete street reconstruction on Wright Street, then we're just doing a mill and overlay? Is that?
No, between Sugarloaf and Industrial Parkway, we're doing a complete reconstruction, which is water main, storm sewer, sanitary, the whole works, complete reconstruction, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Can I make a comment?
Keith or Dennis, I think with that Wright Street, if I understood your comments correctly, I mean, we are committing Lundin money. If we go ahead with this project, we're committing future Lundin money to this project. So I think is that what you were alluding to, that we would have the money every year to pay for the project? I didn't quite understand, and then.
More so, will we need any general fund money? Because I don't know if we originally thought about putting 2 roundabouts in, definitely the one.
No, the original plan was for 2, but I guess I have to ask, the Lundin money, are we gonna be responsible for infrastructure, part of that, out of the general
Oh,
fund?
yeah,
Water and sewer.
water and sewer will be on the city's cost. Lundin funds per the agreement can only be used for the road surface itself, and the storm sewer. And any safety improvements, pedestrian, sidewalks, things like that.
That makes sense.
Clear as mud?
Well, if it's safety, wouldn't that be under Lundin? You said safety stuff, like
Yeah,
light-
that's
I'm
what I mean.
talking about-
Lundin is surface, road surface,
And,
curb, gutter, storm sewer, and safety improvements,
yeah, okay.
which would include lighting. Okay, if we would move on to, we're gonna talk about planning, zoning, and all the other bowels of evil. Later. Okay, page 34 starts the planning department fee schedule. We have actually no increases this year under planning. We did, however, break out some of the fees. And what we've done with that is we've provided for two-tiered fees, because some of the projects that come through this area conditional use permit are not at a level that would need a high level of review. So we have some projects that only need minimal staff review, and some need the full-blown community development review team, which is a representative from basically every department in the city. We've broken those out so that we wouldn't have to be charging someone that's doing a minor review for the cost of what would be a major review.
I mean, that's usually been the major complaint, is that, you know, to build an outhouse, you need, you know, the same amount of money as
Yeah.
major building. Thank you.
Well, and the thing, you know, you have to remember, with a conditional use permit, it requires a public hearing, so we have to do an advertisement in the newspaper. You know, those advertisements in the paper are hundreds, you know, almost $200 now, depending on what type of ad you're gonna run in there and so on. So that's where a lot of your cost comes from, but thank you for noting that, because we did try to lessen the burden on lesser projects.
Some say.
I think it's helpful to the city and to people who are building something to be able to look at this and see that it's cost-based, and breaking it out rather than saying, just throwing darts at the board, basing it on what it costs the city, and rather than the taxpayers being responsible, those that are starting a project need to bear the costs, particularly in these times. So thank you for doing the work to find out what it costs and then putting that in the budget as it is.
Yeah, you're welcome, and thanks to my staff for doing that.
And again, it's just, to me, it looks like a common sense approach, so glad to see it.
The next, we would move back to page 22 in the fee schedule, which is the actual zoning fees. We did not increase any of the fees in zoning. However, again, under site plan review, we broke out and created a lesser fee for a site plan review that would not need a higher level of review. So a smaller project would cost $460 instead of the $1,700 for normal administrative site plan review. So trying to be helpful again, breaking those out for the smaller projects. Okay, we'll move on then to page 92, which is the fact sheet for our planning division. In our planning division, they're responsible for coordinating land use and transportation planning, community master plan, and they also deal with current land use and zoning. Our city planner is actually our zoning administrator. He wears two hats and assists which helps the planning and zoning official in that department. Last year, they were pretty busy with the current planning. I think there were 7 zoning ordinance amendments that they prepared, 1 sign ordinance amendment, and then the basis for the work session tonight is a pretty in-depth study of rental properties that was done through the planning office. We also dealt with the strategic plan. I primarily spearheaded that from our department, but that was also work done through the planning division. The zoning division, they're kind of one and the same, planning and zoning. They're of course responsible for reviewing land development proposals and ensuring compliance with the zoning ordinance. As far as our statistics, they've been pretty consistent over the years, and I don't really see any change over those within the past couple of years. Once we hit 2013, we saw an uptick, and it's kind of continued along the way. Next, I'm going to move on to page 95, which is the expenditures for planning and zoning. And really, the only one that I have to point out on this one is our professional and contractual line item, which is 801. It's an increase of $50,000, and we are requesting that money for zoning ordinance work, and that was per the adopted strategic plan. I think the zoning ordinance was pretty high on the list for the city commission. We'd like to get some consulting assistance in to help lead that project for us so we can get it done in a timely manner. And that's really the only highlight that I have for that. Other than that, everything else has pretty much remained the same or
Question. We approved the budget, and this remains in it, because it is, I think, a priority of the commission. How long do you think, realistically, 18 months?
I would say a year.
Year?
Yeah. Yeah,
So
my,
probably
and, you know,
2018, really, when you think about it.
Yeah,
mean,
what
by
I
the
would
time-
like to do, as far as timing for this, if this gets adopted, I would like to move forward with proposals in the month of November. And that way we can get someone on board for the winter months, which is typically a slower time for our planning and zoning staff. And then that will give them some time to coordinate with a consultant and get a majority of the work done up front. And it's always better to have your public meetings in the wintertime as well. People tend to come to those as opposed to having them in the summertime, so. And then we would turn the consultant loose and expect a product to come back, over the course of the late summer, fall next year.
Thank you.
So you expect that this zoning ordinance consultant will cost about $40,000? Is that what you're saying, by the increase from 15,000 in the current budget to the 57,500?
No, again, this is one where, we expect it to be $50,000, and then we reduced our contingency at 15,000 is normally a contingency in case we need any special help. We've reduced that to 7,500 with the expectation that the city manager is gonna recognize we're really, really busy with the zoning ordinance, so he's not gonna drop a project on us that we're gonna need some help with.
First I heard of that.
A quick question. I was on the planning commission at the time when we tried to get the revision done before, and we went more local with a firm rather than maybe one that has more experience doing this. I guess my comment would be, as much as I prefer to hire locally, I think in this case, similar to the charter commission, I mean, we really sought out someone who had that experience, and it made more sense. And I guess just a comment going forward, I'd like to see that probably happen in this case, just to move it along and really get the expertise you guys need with it.
I believe we're on the same page with that.
Thank you for keeping the enforcement official in the budget.
He's busy. That's the reason why the printing and publishing went up $1,500. He's doing a good job. Okay, we're gonna move on to page 96, which is strategic development. And as I had mentioned, this covers basically the economic development planning and implementation arm of the city. Work through the city manager and myself. We acted as primary liaisons for the DLP construction and transportation efforts, and during the past year, we're also updating the economic development plan, which we expect to see at the end of this month. At least we should see a first draft on that. On page 97, dealing with the expenditures, everything is pretty much the status quo in here. And the big line item, as always with this, is professional and contractual. Aside from the Chamber of Commerce, the next Michigan zone fees, we have $36,000 for the lobbyist, and then there is $40,000 for appraisals and planning sale assistance for the Heartwood forest land per the strategic plan. Now, that money in itself would come from the Heartwood Debt Service Fund, but that was a strategic plan issue that was identified. Again, one of the ones that was in the, I think, in the top 5. So we'd like to move forward with that.
So what went into professional contractual? You said 36 for the lobbyist.
36 for the lobbyist, 10,000 is membership in the next Michigan zone, $5,000 is membership for the Chamber of Commerce,
I see it at the bottom.
and then 40,000 for the implementation of the Heartwood Forest recommendations.
And by Chamber of Commerce, you mean the real Chamber of Commerce?
City
Thank you.
Marquette Chamber of Commerce.
Isn't that $4,999?
That's it, exactly. I don't know if this is a good time to interject, but I would appreciate a short conversation, if you don't mind, regarding the economic development plan and the potential for a partnership with the Lake Superior Community Partnership. I mean, this would fall under Dennis's budget, and it's not in here, it's not budgeted, and it may be more appropriate to bring it up individually at some other time, but I thought this might be a good chance or a good point in this conversation to at least address that. I've had private conversations with some or most of you, and I'm not really sure how you all feel about that as a group. So I think it's, the reason I bring it up now is as part of the strategic plan is their economic development plan, and part of that economic development plan is also going to call for a relationship between the Chamber of Commerce and the Lake Superior Community Partnership. So we already belong to the Chamber, and I'm wondering if I could solicit just a few comments from commissioners regarding the partnership. Thank you.
And just to better help understand the economic development plan and the relationship is, the economic development plan is gonna recognize what we see in that there seems like there's about 18 different agencies at every level trying to do economic development. And the successful communities are the ones that find a way to coordinate and have those agencies somewhat work together. So that's basically what you're going to see in the plan, having some type of measurable success from somebody that can bring things together.
Who would wish to comment first? Commissioner Cambenzi would. Thank you.
Well, I'll take a stab at this. If you look at what our local Chamber of Commerce, the City Chamber of Commerce is doing, I mean, they're really trying to bring businesses together on similar issues and act kind of as one body coming forward to us. The calendar was a great example. And now we're dealing with the Empire Mine closing, and the LSCP is the group bringing us together. It's not the county, but it is the LSCP that is saying we need to get not only municipal leaders together, but we need to get the superintendents from the school districts. They're bringing in everyone to have this conversation that will be affected. And I see that as one example. And certainly as they digress from what they were doing, move into a regional county approach, I think we're gonna have more opportunities with Sawyer. I think we're gonna have more opportunities with energy. I think there are a lot of ways that we can get a lot out of being a part of this. And I know $10,000 was thrown out there as kind of a starting point. maybe we could get some numbers. What does the county pay? You know, who else is contributing and how much?
I can answer that somewhat. Sorry about that. The county pays $50,000 a year to the partnership. Most municipalities that belong are on a similar type contract basis as opposed to a membership. Memberships are primarily focused on the private business aspect of the organization. I think they're all generally around $10,000 as a contract. And from what I've seen, the contracts are pretty simple. I mean, they're not anything extreme.
Just to summarize it, I like what Dennis said, and that is, you know, that the success comes with kind of organizing and being part of it rather than kind of being against one or some of it. So I'd like to see us join it and be a partner.
I read over the proposal. Now, in the county, spending $50,000 is sort of very appropriate because they have no economic development division. In effect, they transferred that responsibility, and that's fine. And if you go back to the history of why the partnership came about, it's when K.I. Sawyer closed. Then Monsignor Capo led a group to bring and collapse all of the economic development organizations in the county into one, which I think we had about 19 then or something, okay? And many of them were just paper organizations, but you had to file papers and spend money. So they put together, at that time, the Lakes Period Community Partnership, and it had a focus on K.I. Sawyer. What were we going to do for jobs and things of that nature? And over the years, it has evolved into other things as legislation changes and things of that nature. I was looking at the proposed contract that you sent us as a draft, and it has some political advantages for us. I'm not sure what it necessarily brings to us. We now have our own lobbying firm. The organization of Marquette County and Delta County, that was put together really by our two cities, Delta, Escanaba and Marquette, involving those two counties. So I think it's $10,000. We do have our own Chamber of Commerce now here in the city, of which we've invested our annual dues, and the calendar, we gave them a big chunk of money for the calendar. There obviously is some duplication, but I think, as Dennis said, in some of the economic development, sometimes you end up with duplication. We also, if you think about it, the biggest economic development driver in our city has been the Brownfield organization. I mean, if you really look at what we have done as a city with the Brownfield, it's quite significant. I mean, the biggest construction project to hit this city in a long time, the Founders Landing, things of that nature. And I suspect we're going to get more out of the whole Brownfield operation. So I think there is some duplication there. There may be some political advantages for us, but I think much of the economic development that's going on in the city is going on because of the staff here, and because it's Marquette. Can we contribute and help out in some other way by being a part of this organization? Maybe we can, and that's a possibility. And I suppose that's what we should evaluate and look at. I just think, I don't think we should kid ourselves that they will become the economic driving force in the city, because I think we already know what some of the things are on the plate for the future regarding economic development here in the city. And our crew does much of that, so, okay.
Mike?
I think any conversation about the partnership would have to start with what is the value of the property, our property that we are paid $100 for. Is it $1,000 a month? That's $12,000. I think we need to start with that before we started talking about giving additional cash dollars for that operation. We do a lot for economic development here. We have a lot of very proven, effective organizations, and my mind is we should stick with them. We're within Marquette County, and our county is spending $50,000 to, quote, bring people together. Maybe that's our contribution as being members of the county. I sometimes question if the partnership does more measuring of other success rather than driving success. I think we have a lot of organizations, bodies, brownfields, smart zone, things like that, that actually drive and accomplish things rather than just measure other things. So I would not be in favor of including this in the budget. I think the current budget appropriation for this is appropriate.
I think also, I feel that, I believe that the partnership does have value, but how much value is it for the city? I'm not convinced of that yet. As has been stated previously, we have a lot of different organizations, the Smart Zone, the Next Michigan Zone, our lobbyists who are doing well for us. I particularly would like to see what this lobbyist situation is going to bring to the city, and that's going to take a year or two. I don't know what more the partnership could do for us at this point. Yes, they have value, but I don't think we're ready for it this year. We can look at it. Maybe in a year or two, we can, I would personally want to wait before we fund it. So I'm not sold on it yet.
Well, just to follow up, I mean, this recommendation, is certainly coming from the economic development plan that we studied and paid for and now staff. So I guess if I could ask staff to kind of reiterate maybe what that firm has kind of said coming out of it and why it's important to be part of it. I put a lot more weight on that than, maybe just other agreements that previous commissions made. I mean, we've made dollar agreements for rentals per year with the YMCA for long periods of time, with the Superior Watershed Partnership at several of our buildings. And are they great agreements for the taxpayers? Maybe, maybe not. Should that be part of maybe what we pay? I would be agreeable to that. But I really do think there's a reason that the consultant sees value in us being a part of that. And if staff has anything that they could add maybe more specifically to what came out of that, I'd appreciate hearing.
Can you answer that? No.
Quick question.
Go ahead.
When do you hope to have that report back to us?
Be by the end of the month.
Oh, okay.
The only thing I can add is that, if you recall, the Economic Development Plan was created about 5-6 years ago, and it's currently being updated. The previous plan saw the benefit to the city as becoming involved not only on a local relationship such as the chamber, but on a regional or county-wide involving the LSCP. As Dennis just mentioned, we haven't received the final upgrade or updated report yet, but I have received early indications from them that there's probably going to be the same type of recommendation in the updated version. I'd also like to add, I think that it's not a mandate, it's just a recommendation. It's part of the economic development plan that if we adopt the overall plan, we're not committed to doing that. So So you can adopt the economic development plan and not fund the partnership. But I know the the person doing the update has met with the LSCP, has met with the chamber, and sees value in that relationship.
And it, should be noted that the plan will come along with a set of recommendations regarding the partnership, including that, any relationship has to have measurable results. There has to be some metrics involved with that. So, it's not a recommendation to donate money to the cause per se. It's a recommendation that there's be some type of coordination and contract issued and understanding of a relationship with some metrics or measurable results attached to it. Any further questions on strategic development? Okay, the next one I have is the Road Safety Fund, page 137. In a nutshell, this is really just the Lundin money. This is where we receive the Lundin money and disperse it. Or as I like to refer to it, as the placeholder for the Lundin money. Is that right?
Yeah. I just want to point out, when we refer to the Lundin money, we receive actually two separate monies from them. And Dennis is over the road safety, and that one we get $200,000 per year. This is the first year, well, last December, we get the payments towards the end of December. Last December, we got the first full share. The December before that, it was a very prorated amount, like a third of it. So this this December, we'll receive the second full share of that 200,000. And then when Kurt gets up here, part of his is the road maintenance part, and that's $500,000 per year. And when they were talking about the improvements to the Wright Street, we're actually talking about the $700,000 in total. That some of the options we're looking at are, well, three that I know of, or anyway, is one, we're trying to negotiate with them to get a lump sum payment up front where we can try to pay for everything in cash up front. The other option is to bond for it and to use this money as it comes in each year to make that debt service payment. Or the third option is to not get a lump sum payment, not bond, but just do what we can with the money that comes in each year as it happens. So those are the three options we're looking at, but I just wanted to point out there are two separate parts to the Lundin money, but it does total $700,000 per year.
Thanks, Gary.
Does the Lundin money all go for the road itself, or can we buy a plow and charge it to this account?
We did that with the road maintenance. We do have periodic meetings with Lundin to make sure that our plans coincide with what they envision the money to be used for. And it was my understanding, and maybe Kurt can address it better, but the snowplow that was needed was a special snowplow for that area. So that's why we used the Lundin money to purchase that.
Tom?
Thank you for the clarification, Gary, because we hear a lot about spending the Lundin money, and I thought, God, we're spending a lot of Lundin money, and I wonder, but we have two accounts, and I sort of assumed that. How long, the 200,000, which was a separate payment, how we've gotten that, this year will be the first full year. How many years do we anticipate receiving that one?
I don't have the contract in front of me. I think it was like 8 years, and then there's a lump sum payment at the end of the 8 years.
Okay, and then
Give or take
the
8 years.
500,000.
Same situation.
Same situation?
Yes.
Okay, could we maybe, don't put a number one on your list, but at some point, just get a breakdown of that as to how many years, just, because
Yes.
we've been spending a lot of Lundin money lately, and I thought, God, is it a bottomless pit? And fine if it is, but I doubt it is, and it just would be interesting to see where that
Yes,
is.
we can do that.
Now, later on this morning, we're gonna be talking about bonding, quite a chunk, and we've done that before. Is that associated with this project, or using some of this money for that?
Yes, sir.
I
And
mean, we don't have to go there now, but.
well, this might actually be a good time to do that. Page 13, if everybody will turn there. We actually already had a work session on the capital improvement part, but page 13 is, we were looking at the 6-year capital improvement plan. Page 13 is the first year of that 6-year plan, and that coincides with the fiscal year 2017 budget. Of this plan, I do need to make a note, we need to add a project. At the work session, it was added at the last minute, and it didn't get into this document, but that was the Nordic Bay, the old Nordic Bay property that was discussed.
For 350, wasn't it?
Correct.
Approximately, yeah.
Yes. And that would add to the bond issue. So right now, this is what the projects that are in the budget. And a lot of these are predicted to be funded by a bond issue. The Lundin money, which we were just talking about, it's not currently included as a bond issue because we're still hoping we can get an upfront payment to pay cash. But if we were to have to bond for that, that would add to the total of the bond that we have to do. But I don't know if there are other comments, but this might be a good time to talk about capital projects since Dennis and particularly Keith have a large part of that. And I don't know if Mike might have some comments as well.
Thank you, Gary. You stole my thunder. That's how I was gonna close, but
sorry.
that's all right. In general, this is keeping with the 6-year capital improvement plan recently adopted. This is year one, which is 2017. And these were the projects that were vetted through the committee, ranked by priority, and then placed on the list, presented to the planning commission, and then taken to the city commission at the work session. So if there are any questions about an individual project that we can answer, we'd be happy to do that. And as Gary said, we would be adding the Nordic Bay project as a placeholder, providing that we could come to an agreement with the property owner for a development agreement that is mutually acceptable.
Are you currently in discussions with
Yes.
Viridia? What kind of timeline do you see?
I would expect that we could probably wrap up some form of development agreement within a month or so. We have a draft form now that's been presented to the city attorney. I'm sure they'll take a look at it, and we've already had a few discussions. We need to revise a few things and send it back to them and continue to engage them in those discussions.
Sarah?
If I just, in revisiting this conversation, I think Commissioner Conley brought up some good points, and I just want to reiterate that I think we need a policy in place before we approve one or more of these type of commitments, just where it's very clear why we're doing it. Certainly the legal agreement would spell out all the financial commitments, but I think as a commission, we really need to put a policy in place that protects us.
I raised the issue about the bond, not so much about the individual projects, because we've had, the staff has kept us involved and engaged. My question was paying the bonds off, and because it is a chunk of money, and you can get yourself in trouble with indebtedness. I mean, we're getting the money very cheap. We're probably, it's probably the cheapest money we get in a long time. But at the same time, you do have to pay it back, and that was my concern. I wasn't so concerned about the individuals, because you've kept us advised about that. But I think Commissioner Cambenzi's point, and I think that's what the discussions are about. If we put in the water and sewer, there is a quid pro quo, and, yeah, okay.
Dennis or Gary, going back to the question of Lundin, now that they found another body of ore, and they figure another year of operation, will our contract be extended another year?
We haven't had those discussions yet. The last discussion we had was they were exploring the possibility of extending. It wasn't anything definite at the time, but that's something we can bring up with them when we next meet with them. But there hasn't, like I said, been any talks regarding that as of yet.
Then I guess the follow-up to that would be, if they found a third body of ore and they keep, because there's a lot of,
Well, that'd be good news for
Good,
us. We could keep maybe
for some
extending
people,
this
yes.
for a while.
no, right.
Yeah.
The longer they're there, hopefully the better
Correct.
it is for the city.
Yes.
Mike?
There is a slight risk with all of this, more than what you see on the paper, and that's the elusive 595. If 595 is completed, approved and completed, all this money disappears. So we are playing a little bit of a timing game here, in that we would hope that we would time it so that if we do go ahead with this plan, that we go through enough years using Wright Street that we are able to get the necessary money from Lundin to pay for it. I am not familiar with how far long it takes. For example, the appeal to go through, I believe there's an appeal on 595 on a previous DEQ decision not permitting that road. So I just want to make sure you're aware of that. I feel in my conversations with Lundin, I feel comfortable that they're committed to this route and this plan at this time. However, I can't predict what may or may not change should 595 become available to them.
Thank you. Matter of fact, I wrote myself a note here, because there's a meeting in the city next month. A law firm out of the West Coast is going to be here, and they're having some meeting. It's a night of our city commission meeting to talk about 595. And maybe our attorney could, at some point, not today, but try and find out how long an appeal would take, because I remember thinking about that, because you did tell us at one point that there was an escape clause in Lundin's commitment to the city if they had a new road. You just don't build that 595 in a year, and there will be appeals, and it'll go to court and so on and so forth. But there is a meeting, so there is a group of individuals, and it's a firm from out west, and they're here, and I think they have Michigan counsel from downstate. But it would be good for us, and if we could cash up front would be better, I suppose. And, but maybe at some point our counsel can keep us advised as to how that may be going.
Yes, thank you. And just on another note, Lundin again assures me that they're not part of that conversation.
Oh, okay.
They are, that appears to be an independent effort outside of Lundin's or Eagle Mines plan. So I guess what I'm saying is that they're not driving that effort, at least from what I could glean from our meetings. However, you know politics better than I do. And, you know, it's one of those things I can't predict, but for all practical purposes that, for this conversation, they are committed to the use of Wright Street and the payment of these funds. And as Gary alluded, you know, one of the things that may make this a little bit easier to deal with is that on their suggestion, they offered to talk about an upfront payment. In other words, to pay off the entire 8-year or 9-year commitment upfront, I'm sure at a discount that would benefit them over, you know, as opposed to over the course of 9 years. So we're still in that conversation, and it could very well likely be that as we approach the bonding point or the payment point for this project, that we could have that issue resolved and we could have the money up front and not have to rely on a bond or a repayment plan.
I went to the last Lundin open house and I got the same feeling that even if this did progress, you know, Lundin, they've calculated it to make their money doing just what they're doing. And by the time they see it getting off the ground, they'll be mostly done, if not done with that mine. So I think you're right in your assessment that they just, if it happens, great, but they also realize how long it'll take and that their time has passed for putting that money forward, so.
Just one note on the Lundin. One thing that they are facing is commodity prices really tanked on them. So their commodity prices are pretty much at an all-time low, but they assure us that they're still somewhat profitable, able to keep operating. So there's not a concern, at least at this time there, and hopefully at some point their commodity price will start rebounding so that there's a little more assurance that they're going to be around, at least for the term of the contract we have with them. One other item of note is this actually coincides with page 12. That's a start of the tranche list that we have. And if you look at page 13 on the motor pool vehicles, I think it's item 1716. There was a Sender plow truck for $310,000 that we actually took out of the budget and put it on the tranche list at this time. So if you look at page 13, it's there. If you look at page 12, it's on the tranche list at this time. And also just want to note too that just because an item is on here, it still comes before the city commission probably a couple of different times at least, and you can always say no to it at that time as well. So don't think that by approving this budget as is that we're stuck to issuing this, you know, dollar amount of bonds or whatever, that it can still be tweaked later on during the fiscal year.
Any further questions on capital improvements? Can we plug along? I'm gonna turn it over to Keith for stormwater.
We got one here from Commissioner Frazier.
The 595, I think Lundin would be all about that if it ever gets built, but I don't think they're holding their breath by any means. So, I mean, if somebody give you a shortcut to get to your house, you'll be all about going the shortcut, but you're not gonna give you a few bucks to try and make the shortcut. That's how I feel about them. As far as the old Nordic Lodge property, is that just gonna be keep talking to them for like the next year, and you may do the improvement next year? Or is there gonna be some sort of, you're not gonna do the improvement, so you have some sort of development contract with them or something sometime next year maybe or something?
Correct. We are currently in the process of negotiating a, excuse me, a development contract right now.
Okay. I'm next. Stormwater utility. Basically, it's a fund that covers anything related to stormwater in the city of Marquette. I'm not going to go through what we all have here, but we do have a lot of stormwater infrastructure that we do have to take care of on a yearly basis. Part of this fund covers the engineering aspect of it and also the maintenance aspect of it. You can just kind of go through the program statistics there to see what's been done over the past few years, maintenance-wise, and also as far as stormwater main piping being extended or replaced. I guess I can cover the administration, which is basically our, most of that is our hydrology engineer, Jim Compton, who does a really great job with keeping up with our stormwater infrastructure in the city of Marquette. I guess of note, if you look at the administration under 555-459-801, we are anticipating an increase for our professional contractual. What's this 73,000 here for? Okay. Every year we have a wetlands mitigation cost, which is left over from McClellan Avenue extension. We're expecting that there'll be increase as far as our consultant services there. The gal who currently has been very helpful past 3 years with Marquette Conservation County District office there, she's retiring, so it's kind of up in the air if we'll still get the same savings that we've been seeing from her particular office. There's also, as you can see, 561. I'm not for sure why there's $73,000 in there, to be honest with you. Also, if you look under 555-459-977, this is modeling software that's covered by the SAW grant. So that'll be reimbursed. This is part of the SAW grant that we're currently working with that will help the city look at modeling their stormwater system and their sanitary sewer system. And that'll be done in-house with the help of Jim Compton and other of our engineers. We are continuing as part of the SAW grant to clean and televise all the storm sewer in the city of Marquette. Also sanitary sewer. This is storm related here, but that will be reimbursed by the SAW grant. They are going to be starting here next week with actual televising of our storm sewer and sanitary sewer system. Let's see. Oh, okay. I guess part of that professional contractual I see is I got stormwater management plan. That's been put in there as a $63,000 to cover a stormwater management plan for the city of Marquette. That's kind of a placeholder right now. I'm not anticipating that we'll be doing anything with that probably till 2018, but in case the help is needed, and if we can get started with the proper modeling and field work, we can probably start putting together a management plan for our storm sewer system. I think that's all I got. I mean, you can see the breakdown per the individual projects under 555-459-972, which is our CIP projects, capital outlay projects. They've been broken down by particular project there as far as what funding is required for each project. And I guess I'm open for questions, or Kurt Goodman is also open for questions.
I'd like to point out too, we are recommending a 7% increase in stormwater rates for this next fiscal year.
Do we have any current issues with our stormwater system design that's able to handle the amount of flow or rain that we've had? I know some residents have commented that this year, particularly the beaches, like down at McCarty's Cove, have been extremely altered. I haven't been down there to see it, but I'm just wondering if we...
Are you talking about Lake Superior altering it, or are you talking about our storm sewer flows outletting into storm and Lake Superior?
The outlets, yeah.
That'd be, as far as the increase in storm severity, I mean, all of our pipes are sized for a 10-year storm event, so that really hasn't changed. I mean, when they get to a certain capacity, that's all they can handle. So that shouldn't have changed as far as the outlet volume. It might be a matter of going and maintaining them with some riprap or something because of erosion, but I don't see anything changing as far as the piping itself and the amount of stormwater volume going through them.
We do have a dual, we have a dual system, correct, where it's separate from our
What's that? I'm sorry.
wastewater? The stormwater is separate
Yes,
from
yes.
our wastewater throughout the entire city?
Yeah,
is it?
stormwater fund is separate, yes.
But the actual physical layout is separate?
Yes, it is a separate system.
Okay.
It's not combined, yes. That was done away with 30, 40 years ago, or probably longer than that. There was some combined system there.
I think it's amazing that in Canada, they still have combined systems, many of them.
We still do in Detroit.
Oh, yeah.
You mean the stormwater goes through the sewage treatment?
Stormwater and sanitary go, yeah. Yes.
Or they just go straight in the river?
In some cases, they go straight to the river. Yes, both. If the treatment plant can't handle it, that's where it goes.
Tom?
Commissioner Conley, when I was at the IJC, I was surprised how much just goes straight in, okay? Not treated. Matter of fact, this weekend we had a lot of water, rain, and the ground was not that dry. And I was thinking, looking at Louisiana and other places, I was thinking, I wonder how much was just gonna run off and run into the lake, and not much you can do about it when you start getting those quantities, so. But other than that, the mitigation plan, some years ago, when we built the elementary schools and we had to mitigate property and we had to submit mitigation plans on an annual basis, we worked with the DNR and they permitted our high school class, either through Mr. Coombs or Mr. Robinson, to submit the plans, which got the students out there and so on and so forth. And so I was just thinking, if the person you have, you're losing them, I suspect somebody at the university would probably be willing to pick it up and you could subcontract with them or something. I think the DNR permitted you, but if you got somebody locally, that's fine. So the line item under construction, which goes from 546 to 1.8, those are all the projects listed down below then?
Yes, that's
Okay,
correct.
fine, thank you. Yeah.
The 7% increase in stormwater rates, is that across the board? I mean, general residential and business? And
Yes, sir, that's every billing classification that we have in the stormwater, 7%.
I haven't, sorry, I haven't looked at my water bill in a while, but is our residents billed by square footage, the amount of property that they have, or how is that determined? In businesses, how is that figured out?
As far as the stormwater,
Yes?
I can answer that. There's a flat rate for residential, but then when you look at businesses or certain parcel size, then you gotta look at the pervious and impervious impacts of the actual parcel itself. So you take percentages of that to come up with the actual fee cost.
So somebody with a residence with a 50-foot lot pays the same as somebody with 75 feet of frontage?
Yeah, it depends on where the breakdown is here. I don't know exactly if it's, 50 to 75, but there's different.
So there are strata of.
Yeah, yeah, it's tiered, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And just a question, have we looked at, in terms of, obviously we collect this money to maintain and improve our stormwater, and we're doing a 7% across the board increase. Are there some classes of user that stress the system more, so that rather than a 7% increase, we need to look at 8% residential and 5% business or something like that? Was there any thought given to stratifying for the amount of money that we'd have to spend for improvements down the road because of the use of that strata, that classification?
From the way it's set up now, I think it's pretty fair across the board as far as the user system. And that's all based upon the impervious aspect of it, which For those who don't know, pervious would be water draining through whatever the ground may have there, concrete, whatever, gravel, lawn areas, and then impervious would be where the water actually runs off. So it is taken into account, and I think the way that's set up, it does allow for those users that might have more pavement area, that they have to pay a little bit more towards a fee.
Yeah, I think what you're asking is a question of equity related to that, and it is set up that way. The residential fees, even though they're a flat rate, there was a calculation that went in to those where they pay significantly less than, say, like a Shopko would with the large amount that they have. We've already established that in the fee structure.
But if you go up with a straight percentage, that over time, that tends to smooth out that calculation that you did a few years ago. You know what I'm saying? If
Let's
the math eludes me, but Gary might disagree with me if you will. But if you have a 7% total increase, I mean, for all ranks, don't
Yep.
you tend to smooth out the differential that you'd set up?
That's why we go up across the board. That kind of tends to keep like if they're, with the tier that we have, we feel like we're charging those that are, as you put it, stressing the system more. They were being charged more initially. And if you just keep going up the same percentage, it keeps that proportion in place. Even though everybody is paying more, it does keep it proportional that way.
I'll take your word for it.
And I'd also like to point out on page 8 in the transmittal letter under enterprise funds, we do show what the proposed increases in each of the utilities would have on an average customer. So in the stormwater case, we project the average customers paying $659 per month, and that would increase to $705 per month just for the stormwater portion. And that's just for an average residential customer. Obviously, it's going to go up for more, that for people that, those businesses mostly that stress the system more.
Can I interject here and maybe have Ron speak to this, but that Bolt versus Lansing case, I think, has a lot to do with what we have to follow.
Yeah, I'd say Dennis and Gary are both right. The cost of service has to be proportional to the use under Bolt, and that's what we do. I mean, that's the law. It's a use. It's not a tax. It's really a fee for use, and that's what we do. And they've just described it, and that's required.
So, you distributed to us, the city manager, from Kurt and Sean, water, wastewater rates and usage. And usage is going down, so therefore we have to pay for the system and charge more, which is sort of a contradictory thing, but I understand that, the economics of it. Why are we going down? People just being more frugal? Or has our business in the community, the mix? I know you go to hotels now, they've got new shower heads and everything to reduce the consumption use, and I don't know if, the university and the hospitals probably have done the same to reduce their cost.
Yes, I'm sure Kurt can address it better when it gets to his time, but that is what we're experiencing is there's just more and more people are conserving, which is actually a good thing, but then we get to congratulate them by raising their rates, which doesn't seem fair, but we do have, very nice facilities that we got to keep running. And it's also hope that through our economic development efforts that we can bring in businesses that, use these services a lot more, and that way we won't hopefully have to keep coming back for these rather large rate increases each year.
Thank you, Your Honor.
If nothing left on the stormwater, I'm just gonna close out with the doom and gloom portion with just the AKA or the SWANS list that we have. There are 2 projects on there that are related to community development, so we continue to monitor the Cliff Dow site. We do have a request into MDEQ for the mixing zone determination on that. So I'm not terribly concerned about the the Swan list for the Cliffs Dow site. However, with Lakeshore Boulevard, the revetment and road relocation, that one on the Swans list could be a reality in the future. We are working with Army Corps of Engineers, and they've agreed to what we call a Section 14 emergency review of that, and that's ongoing. It has been for a couple of months now. As a reminder to me now, talking about this, to touch base with them to see where we're at, but they are going to, basically, we've sent them the study that we did as a community, and they're going to take a look at it and see if we can't come up with some funding opportunities for that project. So that's one that's hanging out there that could potentially advance forward at some point in time. Of course, when you work with the Corps of Engineers, you could hope to have some type of a match on that as well, but I'd be remiss if we didn't mention these two as hanging out there. So that closes it out for us. Appreciate your time. We'd be happy to answer any remaining questions you have.
Now, since we're on page 11, I know this isn't all community development, but looking at the Swans list, this is probably a question for Gary. Our tax tribunal cases, DLP, in process of being settled. I thought that was done.
DLP is settled. We're also in the process of settling all of the big cases, with We Energies being the biggest one by far. We hope to have some type of settlement reached very shortly, finalized.
But my question was, isn't DLP done?
Yes, sir. DLP
So
is.
it's not in process. It is.
No, it
It
is
is settled.
complete.
It's been done for some time,
Yes.
for many months.
That was
Yeah.
my
Yeah.
was my thought. It's being listed as in process, but
Yeah, that's
is
just
closed out.
truly done.
we just
some
didn't get
time
that
ago.
updated. So it is, that one is completely done. Yep.
If I could ask just one question, the top of Front Street, probably 700, 800 block, there's a few houses that are right on the rock that are needing some not stormwater, but sewer reconfiguration. Can you give us an update on what's going on there?
Let's be the backyard sewer ones. Yeah.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, these are ones that have backyard sewers and there's no infrastructure in the front, basically in the street to service them. We're planning on having that project, I think, for 2019, I believe it is.
Okay, I know the question is that some time ago, they were given an option to either join or, I guess, do what they've been doing, and now they're being made to join. So I think there's,
Yeah, it's actually required by city code that when we do a project in that area, they would be required to connect. We can't speak for why they weren't many years ago when that occurred, but per city code, they're required to connect.
okay, that's one of the special assessments, I think that,
Some were and some weren't, just depends on the project. It's kind of all over the place, the special assessments here in the city, but in addition, the MDEQ has got involved with this backyard stuff too, and they're pushing it also that these folks get off their backyard and get onto the city's public system.
okay, thanks.
Okay, Dennis, good. Thank you very much.
Thank you. If we can keep us here any longer, I was gonna make up a rezoning case to bring to you at a commission meeting or something.
Yeah, what do you say, 10-minute break? Be back here at 22? Moving on. City manager, start it. Turn it over to Kurt. Kurt. Fire away, Kurt.
Okay, thank you, Commission, for the opportunity to speak today on the Public Works budget. A little background, Public Works Department is responsible for a lot of the maintenance, a lot of the streets, the water systems, making sure that the residents of Marquette get quality service. The budget being presented is, we took into effect all of the operations necessary to maintain the current level of service. So we are presenting a budget that will continue to provide the services that is expected by the residents. First of all, I'd like to thank my staff. This is sort of like Dennis mentioned in his opening remarks, it is a joint effort putting a budget together. For instance, right here, this here is our budget book. Every line item in the budget, we have detailed background information that is based on that number. So there's a lot of work. Superintendent Scott Convenzi started a pretty good process about 8 years ago. We continued that process with putting together I think a very complete, detailed budget. And also Eric Steeman's been a great help this year with his expertise in facilities and with the motor pool. And of course, I gotta thank my administrative assistants. Of course, they take all this information and make sure it looks pretty and typed up nicely, so thanks all. Another thing too, in the last year and a half, the Public Works Department is probably, due to retirement, about 10 employees. These employees that have retired, they're pretty good employees. 10 are over 25, 30 years experience. So we are experiencing a turnover of the Public Works Department. And I'll tell you, when you lose a 30-year-old employee that's used to plowing, that type of stuff, you lose a lot of experience. So that is a challenge that we're faced with moving on in the next few years. With that, sort of the theme of our budget. I know Susan talked a little bit at the first session. A lot of our increases are showed having to do with healthcare, some of the cost of employment. Another big increase is the Board of Light and Power 30% increase. The Public Works Department it shows between all its budgets about $450,000. And that's due to the 30% increase. That could be split up for water, sewer, the street lights, that's a main one. So that impacts the budget. Other than that, I promised the city manager I wouldn't use the word status quo, so I'm not going to use that word. I just did. So I used it once because I know I think I might have used that quite a bit last year. But really, all of the budgets are maintaining the same level of service. The dollars that we can control are pretty much the same as previous years. And then the last thing too that I know we have gone through a challenging year with the interim operation of Public Works. Our new facility is expected, June 17th of next year. There'll be a month or two transition period there, but all in all, it is going to be challenging this winter. I just want to thank the City Commission and the City Manager for acquiring we call it the City Plex building. Without that, I guess it would have been awful. So thank you, Commission, and thank you, City Manager. So with that, I think I'll move on. I'll briefly go through, as listed in your agenda there, each of the budgets. I'm gonna start, first of all, with the fee schedule. On page 36, this would be the Public Works fee schedule. And the changes that we are recommending have to do with the solid waste fee. Currently, we pay $15, or we charge $15.10 per month, and we're recommending a $16 to $16. That has to do with, of course, landfill tipping fees have increased. I think it's a minimal increase to cover the cost of doing business. The other change in the fee schedule at the bottom of the page, we've charged the hydrant meters before. However, it was never incorporated in the fee schedule. So we actually just added that to the fee schedule. But those are the only recommended changes for fee schedules within the DPW budget. Okay, moving on to page 64. This is where I'll start each of the departments' individual budgets. Okay, this is this budget is basically the facility at City Hall. On the fact sheet, it's the responsibility of Facilities Department to maintain City Hall, broken down as individual tasks that the Public Works Department performs. On the expense side, once again, a little notice of increase has to do with the Board and Light and Power. And then also, you'll notice a line item under building improvements of $750,000. $250,000 of that is for a new boiler that currently is in need of repair. In fact, I think it's been tagged out. Right now, we currently only have one boiler in this facility. And then the plan is to eventually spend possibly up to $500,000 for renovation for this facility as we transition the community development department over to the new service center. As part of that renovation, we will be doing a planning document to see what how the new, quote, City Hall will function. There's a lot of structural stuff that needs updating here. Could be some part of the heating system, electrical upgrades. So that will have to be determined within the next 6 to 8 months. So that will be exercise. And the way we plan on funding that is looking at either possible proceeds from the land sale for the Duke Life Point, or it would come from regular bonding proceeds. Okay.
It's possible the boiler replacement will be part of the Johnson Controls plan that was recently been discussed. So it's possible, you know, we just don't know how good of a number that is. We just felt like we should leave it in at this time, particularly in case if the Johnson Controls plan doesn't work out. At least we'll still have money in there, because if you spend any amount of time in this building, you realize we desperately need some help. So,
If I could elaborate, the Johnson Control Plan is a self-funded asset renewal plan that we're looking at. I think I'd mentioned it previously in another meeting, and Eric Steeman is spearheading that under Kurt, and the goal and anticipation is that in the end, we create a solid plan for replacing much of this internal infrastructure, while at the same time saving on the upgrades, or saving because of the upgrades, including, you know, lighting, water conservation, electric conservation, those kind of things. And those savings then transferred or transposed into paying for some of these upgrades. So many of these things you'll see in the budget, but it could very well be that we come up with another funding source as we progress through this plan.
Thank you, Your Honor. All of our other budgets have a line item called technology, and that was explained to us last week that we're dividing that up amongst the people and trying to do a better job of identifying the cost. First, I don't see that here. And then secondly, I'm assuming if we do a $500,000 renovation, we would make sure the building was wired. It looks fairly well wired, but with the newest, latest, where's the technology cost?
There's no technology cost in this particular department. This is mostly just maintenance for this building.
Okay.
But if you look at the individual departments that are housed here,
So
they
that's
all
how
have
you
tech
covered it.
fees.
Okay.
Correct. Yes. And the wiring is part of that $500,000, I believe. So,
Right.
yeah.
Okay, moving on to page 70. This is a park cemetery operation. Once again, in the fact sheet on page 70, it sort of gives a background of how many burials, how many cremations, just sort of the activities. Again, the statistics sort of indicate that pretty much they're pretty even throughout each year. So there isn't any drastic changes on burials.
I have a question.
Yeah.
It looks to me like we have expenditures for the cemetery of 280,000 and revenue of 83,000. So there's a general fund subsidy of the park cemetery of $200,000. Is that correct?
Correct.
Can anyone be buried in Park Cemetery?
I don't know.
I mean, could you be,
Only dead people.
Or cremated.
could you have born, raised, and died in Detroit and be buried in Park Cemetery
Yes.
I believe that's the case, yes.
for the same fee?
Yes.
Has there been any thought to raising fees?
On page 23 is the fee schedule for Park Cemetery. Let's see if they have a non-residential fee.
At what point do you become a resident?
Permanent resident.
I just think you have to buy a lot.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
we do get quite a few people from out of the area that buy the lot, but I think they were born here too, so.
Well,
They might not live here, but I think they want to be buried in Marquette.
back to my question, is there any thought to raising fees so that we can reduce this $200,000 subsidy of the cemetery?
I believe we had about 4 years ago, a pretty deep discussion on that.
Deep discussion, thank you, Gary.
It was bad.
I think it only went 6 feet down, Kurt.
Oh. But we definitely, the fees are reviewed. Basically, it's based on cost recovery. That's definitely something that the commission wishes, we could take a look at.
I think we're losing cost recovery by about $200,000.
Your Honor, I had written the same thing down here, and I was just wondering if, we're trying to make every other program somehow pay for itself, and I don't know how we make you pay for dying, but internment, and I was just wondering if there was any look in your review of the price of the lot, the things of that nature. And I'm assuming that we have, there's perpetual care fund, the cemetery foundation, there must be money in there someplace or something. How much in that there approximately?
I don't know the exact amount that's in it, but the way that works is we can use the interest off of perpetual care. And if you look at the revenue portion on page, I think that's page 70, you see a transfer in from perpetual care, and we're only projecting about $15,000. And a lot of that has to do with, interest rates are so low right now that we just aren't making any money off of it. But I don't know the exact amount, but there is money in the perpetual care fund, and I'll have to get back to you the exact amount.
If I buy a lot there, where does the money go? Does it go into a trust fund?
Perpetual care money we do keep completely separate. It
That I
does
would
have its
understand, but I
own.
mean, if I buy a lot, because the land is there, we own that property, so if I go and buy a lot,
Yeah, when you buy a lot, there's the fee for the lot, and there's also a perpetual care fee that is tacked on. So the sale of the lot goes into this department's revenue, and then the perpetual care part goes into a trust fund, and then that allows us to collect the interest on it and transfer it over. But as far as spending the principal, there are ways I think you can spend it, but it's very strictly regulated by the state as to how you can do that.
Is there any sense amongst my fellow commissioners about looking at this 200,000, 1% of our budget, subsidizing the cemetery, with no regard to who it is, who we're selling it to? Could be somebody from out of town, and it's city general fund money that's going in here.
well, I had written myself a note, because I looked at the revenue and expenditures and said and I didn't have the answer, but I assumed we should look at costs somehow, or revenue side.
Yeah, I guess too, your way you look at it too, that, what's affordable, if you wanna recover the cost, the current rates, we have 34, let's say, traditional burials, if you do the math, it could make it pretty expensive for a city resident.
Do you feel then that it's up to the city taxpayers to subsidize that
No.
reasonable cost?
I don't want to answer that one.
What's a lot cost?
Grave space.
$600, I think, is a lot.
$600. $600.
Then you get into the question, what do other cemeteries charge? I mean, we can't have a Cadillac cemetery. I know we have to account for this loss, but you can't price yourself out of the market either.
Why don't you allow us an opportunity
Yeah,
to
we
look
can
at it?
go back and.
Quite honestly, we weren't thinking of this kind of a dialogue when we came in, so, but it is legitimate, and, I honestly don't know, and I don't think either one of us is familiar enough with, the questions or the answers for the questions you asked, so give us a chance to look at it. I can tell you that we haven't looked at raising the fees, so, we will, we'd like to do that.
Your Honor, one of the other things, it's a gorgeous cemetery. It has a very rich history, and it's a lot of history of this community there. And I think we ought to maintain it. I don't even know what the capacity is. I mean, is there a lot of room for expansion, or are we going to reach a point where we really can't sell any more lots because we don't have the space, and then we have to deal with how are we going to pay for it? So we should really start thinking about how can we start putting money aside for that future possibility. I don't know, and And we're not gonna solve it this morning.
No, I
But-
think there is room for expansion, but how much, I don't exactly know, but I can get the answers
Yeah.
to all these questions. I think the fee that you're looking at probably doesn't encompass the overall fee of maintaining the park, the cemetery itself. You know, it probably covers the cost of digging the hole and burying the hole and those kind of things, but maybe not the overall cost that goes along with cutting the grass and planting the trees and all the other regular maintenance. So
Well,
we'll look into that.
The fee schedule, I mean, you buy a lot and then to be buried is another cost, and that's fine, that happens every place.
Right.
But I was just wondering long-term, and like Commissioner Conley, I looked at that and we're putting in 200,000 a year, and every place else we're saying we're trying to cover, to get the revenue to cover the expenditures and a lot of other things, and I was just wondering if we looked at this in a long time, and I don't wanna make it so outlandish.
Yeah. No, I understand. And I mean, if you think about it, the cemeteries are, at least around here, as near as I can tell, are run or involved in cities. Marquette Township doesn't have one, and Chocolate Township doesn't have one that I'm aware of.
Yeah.
Nagani does, City does, Ishpeming City does. So I would imagine there's all kinds of different fees out there. So let us give us an opportunity to take a look at it.
One,
Yes.
Sarah?
one quick question, or maybe it's more of a comment, but I mean, we are seeing a decreased number of people wanting to be buried versus cremated. I mean, I think that's something we're fighting as well. I don't think we have as many. I think we're seeing it. I mean, just from your
Oh,
revenue,
statistics?
yeah, it looks like we're,
I suppose we can market it more.
I think, we'll involve in our discussion some of the, conversations with the, the funeral directors and things of that nature. I would have to assume that a internment other than burial is probably cheaper, and that has some driving force behind that. So we'll take a look at all of it.
Pete, did you have a question?
Not to rip on your burial procedure, but I know we're getting deep, but and just like to follow my comments, I mean, it wouldn't be bad for you to look at, you don't have to come up with some special fee or something, just to get a look at what you charge in the city. I mean, if somebody from out of town, they want to use, say, Matson Park, they're from outside the city, you charge them X amount of dollars. There's some inside the city, you charge them less. Same thing with, with the Matson Park for storing boats. You charge, people who live in the city, they're paying taxes on the parking lot, so they get charged $5. And if they're from outside the city, they get charged $10 or something like that, So I know that's just something I've looked at, and that's something, you could look at and say, okay, if this person that passed away was a local resident, you can charge them $5. If they were from, like, Detroit or something like that and didn't live here, didn't have a family here or anything, like, you could charge them, if they had family, you could still charge them $5, but if they didn't have any family, didn't have any ties to the town, then maybe charge them, $10 or whatever you can think, whatever fees you come up with, or, whatever. I mean, you already have a fee schedule to look at. I mean, you can look at what parks charge and what everybody else charges, difference in price, and just kind of look at that maybe as an option, so.
I know Paul Albert, he's very respected in the state for what he does, and I know he's got a lot of connections throughout the state that can provide some comparisons and some different methodology to, take a closer look at it, and then maybe try and make it fair and cut the deficit a little bit.
So get some facts and figures and
Yep.
let us chew on it for a while. Okay, moving on. Do we have any more?
Page 83. Once again, I consider this the public works sort of home account. This is where a lot of the budget comes out of to to the other areas of the operation of the Public Works Department. Some of the divisions out of this are administration, street maintenance, parks maintenance, and forestry. Once again, the budget reflects maintaining the current services. We do, one thing about the Public Works operation is that every day is different. We don't know what is gonna happen. We get a lot of residents that call in. We get not complaints, but also ideas how to do things. So that's part of the operation of this budget. Once again, there isn't a major change in the bottom line of this budget. And again, most important, we want to make sure that the cost that we're providing during this budget is maintaining the current level of service.
Tom?
Two comments, Your Honor. First, your description up front, Kurt, is very informative, and I think we sometimes forget how much the city really does do, and we don't put it out there. And I mean, all the things we maintain, all the trails, all the roads, the miles, so on and so forth. So it was even good for, as a commissioner, we sort of know this, but to see it all in one place is informative. The other thing I did have a question is $155,000 in maintenance management software. And I think I understand what that is, but that's a chunk of money.
Oh, thank you. I'm glad you brought that up. That component is part of the SAW grant I received.
Oh, okay.
The idea is to use a maintenance type of software that helps with asset management. This is a grant that's available, and I put it in this budget right now.
You did have it listed on the revenue side.
Yeah. The good thing about this is that then, once we get this implemented, we'll be able to start tracking our real cost. Right now, we're sort of old school. The public work operators or employees, they have a time slip, and then they write certain accounts down of what work they do that day. This way, with this software program, we can start tracking our cost and be able to evaluate how we can improve and be more efficient. But thank you. Moving along.
A question about playground equipment. I mean, I know that's been a topic among Parks and Rec Advisory and Prescal Advisory Committee. They're talking about new playground equipment, and the thought process now is to put it to replace the one at Matson Park. Would any city expense be in the coming year's budget, or is that even farther down the road?
I'm not sure on that would come out of the Parks and Rec Department, Community Services. Public Works is always willing, ready to assist any way we can with in-house labor or maintaining it. That's our responsibility to maintain the facilities. Those requests comes from the Community Services Department.
Thank you.
Pete?
I have some knowledge about that playground stuff. I think you have to talk to Carl. Talk to Carl or John, and they can fill you in on all that stuff. I think it's more than what Kurt has to do. I mean, Kurt's willing to maintain and help anything with it, but Carl and John are kind of in charge of that whole thing. They're working on moving stuff around and readapting and stuff like that. I've talked to them before a couple times, and I know the board that's working with them and stuff like that. And so they talk to Carl and John. They can answer your questions. So.
Well, I guess the question was, it was really that comes out of communities, comes out of Carl's end of things rather than
Correct.
yours so much. Okay, got it.
Move along to page 86. Just on the fact sheet, as pointed out, some of the statistics, gives existing miles. It also adds, how many miles we plow, the bike path. It's been pretty stable for the last few years. Frequency of when we do our work depends, of course, it's all weather related. On page 87, there is quite a bit of, again, we reduced our salary and wages due to the request of trying to, help, maintain the budget within the city as a whole. You'll see, I think Keith and Dennis, when they talked a little bit about capital outlay projects, that's part of the capital outlay projects for $546,000. So all those capital outlay projects are divided into certain accounts, and that's when they that amount for sidewalks is included in this budget. Moving along to, this is Fund 202. This is where the major streets come into play, local streets, and the next two budgets. Once again, it's a responsibility for, what? Oh, page 112. Once again, another responsibility of the City of Marquette, or the Public Works, is to maintain your streets. Once again, we have 9 plow routes that throughout the community. Those typically can be done, each plow route in a day. Of course, we have breakdowns of equipment, but we still, trying to maintain the streets in a safe manner. We do operate 24/7 based on especially the severity of the weather. And also responsibility of the streets are, pothole patching and some of the street work just to maintain them and keeping the streets clean.
Question
one
about,
point-
sorry,
go ahead.
page 112. Looks like we had significant less snow removal costs in the current fiscal year. What did we do with the savings of that?
Okay, that's a very fair question. Right now, we typically what happens if it's if you don't receive much snow, of course, you get a benefit of the wear and tear on the equipment, less fuel. What we do is we direct the workers to do other types of maintenance. One thing we fell way behind was during the freeze is deferred maintenance on some of our sewer systems. So what we do is we, during that time, we allocate the people to do other type of work. And basically what that does, it shifts the cost from one account to another account. But we do have the people we're paying to be, to work, so we just allocate them to another area. And I think that the sand and the salt, is reduced a little bit, but I don't think, big significant amount.
I just want to point out too, on both major and local streets, a lot of the revenues are formula driven, and a lot of it is based on the gas tax that you pay at the pump. And then the state collects all of that money and they distribute it to each municipality, and the formula is based on population and number of miles of roads and streets you have in each category. We are projecting, or at least the state's projecting an increase in that distribution, so that's how we budgeted for it. But if it becomes a case where, and as we've seen in the past, like right now, gas prices are considered low, but if gas prices were to increase, then people will stop driving as much as they do, which will mean less gas tax to be distributed. So that's kind of the caveat to these two budgets. And then the general fund makes up the difference by transferring funds in at the end of the year to make sure that they balance out.
Not to mention snow in the middle of summer, but what's your plan for snow removal this winter? I mean, you lost your great service site behind the city center, so I know you can't put them out on Lakeshore at that site. So where are your plans on planning to put your snow when you haul it away or move snow around? Where are you gonna put it?
Yeah, that plan's being developed right now as we speak. We've been thinking about it quite a bit. We've got some ideas. You know, there's a boathouse down there by, no. No, but we are looking into it, and there are some alternative sites to do. It may cost a little bit more because of the transportation to haul the snow to.
Don't jinx us too much about thinking about the white stuff during the middle of the bright summer days, but I always push my snow at the boathouse into the lake, so that's an option for you. You can find a place to maybe, if it's just clean snow off a sidewalk or something, you could always maybe back up the dump truck and accidentally dump it in the lake or something.
Actually, no, you can't. Yeah, so once again, you know, major and local streets, once again, we're going to strive. It's going to be a challenge this year with the temporary location of the Public Works Department, 2 different locations, but you know, we're going to get it done. And one thing I know the earlier discussion, the wing plow is going to definitely be a great asset for efficiency for the Wright Street, McClellan Avenue. So that's going to really help out the department. Okay, on page 119, sanitation. This is also could be known as, I guess, the solid waste fund. And as I noted on the fee schedule, we are recommending an increase of per unit from $15.10 to $16. Once again, that's based on you know, the tonnage, the tipping fees, and some of the costs. It's a calculated number that you know, Scott Benzi's done a great job about really looking at what goes into our solid waste, our fee. One thing I'd like to point out that contained within that fee, some of the services, you know, we get the rubbish drop-off site for city residents. We get a compost drop-off site. We have twice a year leaf collection. We have remote recycling containers, you know, that make it are available 24/7. So there's a lot of value I think the city residents do get for that money.
Just comparable, just every carload in the city of Lansing, if you go to the landfill like you would go to the dumpster, $15 per trip. So here we're paying, you can have really a lot of carloads for your monthly fee. This is a good deal.
Yeah, if there's any compliment of what services the city provide, it's that rubbish drop-off on, you know, Tuesdays, every Tuesday, and then second Saturday of the month. That's probably one of the best services I think the city, you know, residents get good value out of that. Moving along to page 135. I know this was touched on earlier. This is part of the Lundin account. Public Works sort of has us, participates in the road maintenance fund. Once again, with the Wright Street project, that project's being funded through, hopefully through the Lundin money. We typically spend about probably $35,000 a year on just routine maintenance of that corridor. That includes the plowing, the blacktop, the patching, and also any minor repairs to the Lundin corridor. Moving on to page 173, Municipal Service Center Fund. Okay. This is a new account. The old municipal service account was sort of discontinued, and then this one was established. I believe we did that just because of, well, there's no building anymore. So we're switching over all the costs associated with the service center relocation, not only currently, but into the future. So this is sort of an account now we're using for our new facility, or our interim facility, and then be using this account moving forward for future budgets.
When you get your new center up and running eventually, are you gonna, I know right now you're still using the old fuel tanks at the hospital, but are you just gonna, when the hospital gets done and your shop gets done, you're just gonna abandon those, or you're gonna, I talked to somebody that, and they asked me that, I said, well, I think the city's still using those old pumps right now, but I think eventually, when they get their new center up and running, they wanna build new pumps at the new facility, isn't that correct, or?
Yeah, that's correct. Right now, under the agreement with Duke LifePoint of leasing the property there, we have use of those that fuel station until June 30th of next year. And we plan on having the new pumps in operation probably by April or May. I think it is the city's responsibility to remove those tanks. So we've already gone through the environmental assessment there. We've got, that money is eligible through the brownfield to remove it. But it is the city's responsibility to remove those. But in the interim, though, we definitely be using those, until June 30th next year. Okay, moving on. Now we get into my passion, the water, wastewater. On page 179, a little background. Again, this is the Marquette area wastewater treatment facility. It's an operation that is owned by the city of Marquette at 85%, Chocolate Township 10%, and Chocolate Township 5%, and Marquette Township 10%. This is by intergovernmental agreement that's been that has been on for over 35 years. It's a good organization, representative from the city and the two townships, and basically the budget being presented. It took a while to really start to get an idea. Anytime you build our upgrade was 2008, and we've really stabilized our cost of doing business or operating that facility. Like anything, a lot of it depends on how much wastewater you treat. The less water you treat, the less revenue you get. So that has to be adjusted accordingly. Probably the biggest change in this wastewater, the budget, is on other expenses. We have, under administration, there was a few years we have not put money into our reserve fund. Typically, the wastewater plant has a reserve fund that's used for any unforeseen repairs, or more importantly, down the road, that you'll be funded if you have to spend $800 million for a project. This is a SRF requirement, state revolving fund requirement. Currently, we have about $700,000 in that reserve fund right now. However, the last few years, we have not put that in. But now we're recommending that we start putting it in again. That does, the per unit, the two townships in the city are charged by a formula based on per unit for flow and then fixed cost, which include the debt retirement and then also includes any capital improvement projects by the percentage of ownership. So there is a slight increase per unit being charged to the city and the two townships. This budget was reviewed at our meeting last week, and it's definitely is being endorsed and recommended by the two townships. Once again, too, I know I've said this a few times, a big impact of this budget. The wastewater plant and the water plant are one of our largest cities' power users. So we definitely this reflects a $76,000 increase in power at 30%. And that had something to do with the a little bit increase in per unit rate. And one thing Gary touched on earlier, or Mike did, we are hoping to work with Johnson Controls. And of course, anytime, if we could, we're always looking at ways we could reduce our energy or improve the efficiency. So those are some things that hopefully we'll be able to implement.
Can I ask a question? I think, and I'd like to thank Sean for his work on this too, the little study on rates and usage we got. I think it's important because it's not comfortable when you have to raise the rates in double digits at all. But I think I think it would be wise of us to show that when we built, especially our plants, our water and wastewater plants, that a majority of that money, well over 50% of that money, came from federal or state dollars, and that even though we've increased rates here and there, some years we haven't, which could be considered our fault for not keeping up with inflation. I think the biggest problem we face is, one, we're not getting those dollars to maintain or rebuild these facilities, and two, the power increase. I mean, this is huge. $76,000 one facility. That's a lot. I know Lance actually is looking at putting solar panels on their wastewater and water. Maybe it's just their water facility to try and save some of that money, and hopefully we can do that. But going back also to kind of be as transparent to the public as possible is why we're suggesting these rate increases. I'd like to see maybe some slide or something on the power increase, as well as, why we're in the position we are now, because it's hard to explain to people why now we need these big increases before we didn't need them. Where did we fall short? And I think we saw that with the BLP.
Well, I think that's one variable. Also, I think the position the city's taking recently is being very proactive on improving their infrastructure. When you think of water sewer rates, you got to think, you know, the water plant, wastewater plant, that's a component, that's a facility, but it is part of our infrastructure. We have 14 lift stations. I guess and a good news is that the upgrade that we did 2008 for the wastewater plant, we're approaching 9 years. And it was a 20-year bond of about $15.3 million. So believe it or not, that plant is 9 years old. Another thing too that we're realizing, the water plant, the original plant was built in 1978, 79, and then the upgrade was 1997. That facility is reaching 20 years old. It looks good, you know, but we did include some money for replacing some of the pumps and the motors and that type of stuff. But yes, doing business as, you know, the other ones that we can't control is, like say, the fixed cost of especially like for the electric power. And of course, like I know you've talked in earlier sessions about the, you know, the healthcare of employees. Because it costs the same to really when you open up that door, it's pretty, you know, you got some fixed cost in the treatment of water. You know, that's one thing, you know, I like to emphasize. But yeah, I don't know if I'm answering your question.
Well, I just think especially with the Flint water crisis, I think we have an opportunity to help educate the community. And, you know, certainly as a commissioner, I'd like to help them understand what they even own in terms of the water and wastewater infrastructure and how expensive it is to maintain and why it's important to kind of stay on top of it. So just my comments, maybe we can take this a little further and just help people because all they see is the increase.
Yeah, no, I agree. You hear that, Sean? But no, I understand what you want. I think it's what we need to present it a little bit better because we've done that in the past, you know, quite a few years ago. And believe me, it doesn't hit people until they get that bill. But anything we can do and I know the state's really promoting this too, the education process, you know, but we'll definitely.
Well, and maybe what else it can do is point to the fact that at different government levels, state and federal, they used to help out a lot more, and maybe we can relieve some of the pressure on us by saying, hey, where did that money go? Where did that revenue sharing? It goes back to that, you know, what's truly important to give back to the city to help it operate. So different stances, I guess I'm looking at the.
Commissioner Conley?
I want to thank you for taking a fiscally responsible approach to improvements and maintenance of this because although nobody likes annual increases, what they don't like even more is the large bill for catching up, which is even more expensive than maintenance and keeping up with it. So 7%, it seems like a lot, and it's going to be probably 7% next year, but it's rather than the huge bill down the road, because that will be even more than the compounded 7%. So thanks. And it will also prevents the disaster from happening, as we've seen elsewhere in the state.
We should probably point out in the water and sewer, we're recommending 10% increases in water and sewer, and not just, but 7% in the stormwater. So.
And one more thing too, I'd like to point out that I know a lot of these communities in this study here, and they've been down the lower tier, and we've had some internal, you know, discussions within my profession. Those communities, they're going to be going to 30-35%. So you can hold your rates down so long, but it's going to it'll catch up to you. And the other thing is the Michigan Department of Water Quality is taking this very seriously. They're the days that if a community does violate the Clean Water Act, the mayor or someone cannot say, we don't have any money, that's not gonna work anymore. So they are putting a lot of emphasis on the municipalities to really advocate, to make sure that your water sewer rates are set to maintain your system, to maintain that water quality.
Commissioner Baldini?
In a previous life where we did water, one of the things we take for granted is the reason we are rather healthy is because we transport clean water and we get rid of a lot of sewerage in a very healthy manner in a country. I mean, when you really think about it as a nation. The other thing is when, previous position also, when communities, as you have noted, Kurt, decide that their water system collapsed, they were paying like, I remember, $5, $6 a month, okay? And then they would go to USDA and look for money, and they would have to have 300-400% increase, if not more, which percentages sounded great, but they never put money aside. And I always thought that the USDA should have mandated that if you use some of our money, you will establish a fund and set money aside for the future, because it's absolutely essential so that we save that shock, that big shock. Some people say, well, that's fine, let the future generation pay for it. But when it comes, it really disrupts family budgets and everything else. And this way, a gradual process and also setting money aside. I think we saw where we had that frost level a couple of years ago, and it disrupted so many of our pipes. I mean, we don't have, knock on wood, earthquakes or things of that nature, but it is important for us to do that. And I think, and I know we'll catch some flack, but it is important for us to set that money aside and to keep a gradual increase in the funds to protect the maintenance and the purity of that system. And it just is.
Yeah, I think too that, I think the plan, again, it is our goal. I think, Gary could chip in if he wants, but eventually by raising them a little bit, it is our goal to start really setting some funds aside for the water plant, for the infrastructure. And again, to get that fund balance, that's going to be nice to see. And I think if we could show the residents that what we're doing is, we're doing the right thing.
Two questions. Is there a way to kind of at least show us as a commission maybe where your projections are 5 years out? I mean, do we expect this trend to continue for a while, level off, or?
No, thank you for bringing that up. Another component of that SAW grant has a sewer ordinance / rates structure study. And it's my recommendation to bring to the City Commission very shortly doing a professional consultant rate structure study. This is a little different than a rate study. This is looking at your water system, looking at, there's a lot of ways of billing coming up with a rate have changed over the years, especially the last 5 years. And that's where we'll be able to do this rate structure study and then do the projection of 1 year, 2 years, 3 years to show you where where you could be in 5 years. But that's definitely, I don't think we've done one of those in many years. Many years. We have not done a complete rate structure. And that'll be done by a financial consultant that specializes in that.
And then can you just give us a brief history, say the last 6, 7, 8 years? Were there years where we did not raise the rates?
Yeah, I think in one of the pages, we did show the history. Yeah, there's 2 years that we had 0% increase.
Also, if you look at page 185, it shows the history of the rate increases since FY08. So in FY08 and 09, there were 0% increases. And then also in 14, there was no increase. Page 185 up towards the top under the revenues section. The revenues is up at the top. And then just below that is a note that gives a little bit of history of rate increase since FY08.
Must have been an election year.
Yeah, well, actually in FY14, we were actually seeing an uptick in water usage, so we were hopeful that just that would cover it, but for whatever reason, it was just a one-year thing we saw.
And I know it was brought up earlier, you know, of course, water conservation has played a role in water and sewer. You know, lest you sell, the less revenue, but your costs are fixed. And again, that goes to the electrical industry too.
Kurt, if you're going to apply for a rate analysis, one of the things I've been thinking about, and not that we're going to do anything about it now, but does that company also provide expertise on how you explain it on a bill? Picking up on Commissioner Cambenzi's point, we have the city, there's an electrical bill that goes out from the Board of Light and Power, and there's one that goes out from the city, and I know not everybody looks at it, but I'm wondering if we should redesign our bill or our explanation to communicate to the public, and not that you need that on your plate now, but if we're hiring consultants, are there some consultants that might actually provide that service for us?
No, like, I've had some preliminary discussions. We've got a rate consultant under contract right now because we're doing a joint water rate study with Marquette Township. We did a pretty extensive request for proposals process, and it's my, I haven't talked to the city manager yet, is to bringing a recommendation to amend that contract to include the rate study. And yes, that would be a component of the scope of work. I think it's probably the most important components of that scope. Another thing too, that Michigan Department of Water Quality has a small work group that are addressing a sort of a public relations to help educate municipalities, because they want to send a message consistently to all decision makers. So that's another thing that we'll have resource information. I've been paying very close attention to that work group and participated in a few of the calls with them. But once again, I do think Sarah's right. We need to provide the residents of what we're doing with the money. I mean, I know we've sort of jumped around a little bit, but basically the water and sewer fund are, again, they're budgeted to maintain the current service. You know, we do take care of main breaks, we take care of, you know, sewer backups, that type of stuff. One thing I want to do is I can't, you know, we got a pretty good crew. And also we've got, you know, some aging equipment, but we do have the tools to do the jobs. And that's another thing that goes into the rates too, is having a proper equipment to react on emergency calls. So if there's any other questions on the water sewer?
Mike, do you have one?
Looks like we're doing really well for our lead liability.
Yeah, and you know, again, I've been around for a while, and once again, I've been very fortunate to be involved in the 1979 wastewater plant upgrade, the 1980 water plant upgrade, the first plant when we went from the Maritime Museum to the microfiltration plant in '97. Again, and one project I'm very proud of. We have lift stations throughout the community. Those are buildings that pump wastewater. And 2004, we upgraded all 4 of those stations. And doing that at that time has really, the liability and also the maintenance, repair and maintenance. That's one project that sometimes goes unnoticed, and we've got 4 other stations where we've been completed in the last 2 years.
I had a question, just thinking in terms of what's happening in the city. I asked the question, I saw where the list of the stations were, page 187. With the rash movement of things going on in the city, might we have to reevaluate some of these stations? Or are they centrally located?
Yeah, these stations are pretty much define the layout of the city within the city limits. They're in certain districts. Elevations have a lot to do with where you put a station. One rule of thumb, and I know our engineering department, if you can avoid building a lift station, please don't build it. A lot of times it's maybe cheaper for a developer to put a lift station in than put an extra 100 feet of pipe or something. So you really need to take a look at as development goes on, because that's the last thing we want to do is be provided with another, quote, lift station to take care of. Again, on this list here, we have added about 4 stations, but those were built to provide a service. Matson Park, Island Beach Road. So those are 2 examples of, that really improve the service.
Pete?
I know you built one in Madison Park, and it's probably good for you, but are you gonna need one for the hospital when the hospital goes in? Because obviously they're gonna have a lot of flow coming out of their building. You're just gonna hook up, they're just gonna hook up pipes, or you have to put a lift station there? I know you're not part of that. I mean, that's all they're contracting, but I didn't know if you're gonna have to put a extra pipe in or what.
No, maybe Keith could answer that one, but I know during the preliminary evaluation of a site selection, the capacities of the stations was looked at, and I believe hydraulically, the mains are being increased on Baraga. Is that right, Keith?
Actually, no. There's enough capacity in the mains now to accept what the hospital has to offer. It's all gonna be gravity fed. There's no pump stations required for the hospitals.
And one more comment on the hospital. Currently, they use like 110,000 gallons a day. The new hospital, we're looking at probably 80,000. It's gonna be a reduction of water because the infrastructure at the old hospital, and of course, they put in water conservation fixtures. So that's another potential, lost revenue there.
Kurt, do we have any estimate on what it would cost to bring that lift station back online at the Coast Guard station?
Got some good news on that one. I was able to, Eric Steeman and I went over to the site. We had to drill the hole, the lock there. We did go in there. There is a control panel there. There are pumps in there. I turned the pumps on and heard a noise. And actually, lo and behold, one of the pumps work. However, the controls in that building are not compliant for safety, so it'll cost a little bit to move the controls outside. It has to do with explosion-proof area. I do have have someone coming up within the next week or 2 that's going to give me an estimate of what it would cost to retrofit. So I think we can do it. I'm encouraged by what I saw. So with that, moving on last, motor vehicle equipment. I know Mike had something to say on this first, or is that true, Mike? Oh, that's page 200.
I'll let Kurt speak to the details, but generally the motor pool is going to have a little bit of a different effect on this year's budget. Couple of things that came to light when I looked at this with Gary, and to bring it all together in a clear understanding, I think in this one meeting might be difficult, but overall, there's 2 points I want to make. One is that, historically we've maintained the motor pool fund as a enterprise fund, correct?
Internal service.
Internal service. Okay. And by that I mean over the years we contributed to it in anticipation of large expenditures. Back when I was acting city manager before Bill came, that fund was well funded. Previous commissions couldn't avoid the urge to spend that extra money that we had there, so we've been maintaining it at about $1 million ever since. Looking at our motor pool situation, we've got some significant expenses coming up, mainly fire trucks, which will likely be beyond your terms as commissioners, maybe not. We're looking at in 2020 a new fire truck that'll be, if not all, most of that $1 million, roughly $750 to I'd say $900,000 expense. We've got, and this is just the way it timed out, in 2025 and 26, 2 more fire trucks on the schedule. So we're talking $3 million here in the next 10 years. And what I'm getting at is that somehow, and it isn't for you to decide today or even this process, I think it's important that we start funding that internal service fund again, so that future commissions and future managers and future people here who are running the city don't have to struggle so much with how to replace these pieces of equipment. That's point one. Point two is that we are, as you will hear, or maybe you've already heard, and I'll let Gary explain a little bit better, but through the course of this budget, Gary determined that we were going to need a general fund transfer to balance the budget. In keeping that motor pool concept in line, we were roughly, all said and done, about $1.5 million, $150,000 to $200,000 over budget. So when the request came for the motor pool, on how to fund the motor pool, we had two significant requests that were legitimate from the Public Works Department. One being a new plow truck, the other being a new front end loader. And for lack of a better term, we've been kicking these motor pool huge expenses down the road for a number of years. I think you've toured the motor pool, and I've personally been over there to watch how they work very hard to maintain the current pieces of equipment that we have. Total refurbishing of snow plows. Our newest snow plow is 10 years old. We have equipment that is in excess of 20 years old there. You are correct that we are getting a new snowplow this year. It's with the Lundin money, but that in itself is a wind plow and not a four-wheel drive, so its use is limited. So I guess what I'm saying is that in the motor pool, I I took a leap of faith and placed a front end loader back into the budget to the tune of about $250,000 roughly. The request, like I said, was for a new snowplow and a front end loader, but I opted to keep the front end loader. That is going to add to the general fund transfer. In other words, it'll bring the general fund transfer up to about $400,000 or something to that effect. Now, what I'm asking the commission to do is to support that transfer. Of course, you can cut the front end loader as well and bring that general fund transfer down. However, I don't see that as a solution to what is happening with our motor pool. I think we've used the motor pool over the last several years to balance the budget, to avoid those expenses. And for lack of a better description, it's only making things worse for the future of the motor pool and future commissions and city managers. The other point I'd like to make is that according to my magnificent chief financial officer, we can get away with making this type of fund transfer once and not have it affect our overall bond rating. If we do this every year, then our bond ratings will tend to slip. So I guess I'm looking at it that if we're going to make a general fund transfer, we might as well make it this year. We maybe might want to make it a good one. As long as we have to do one, do it now. So I'm recommending that the front end loader be added. If you're feeling abundantly generous, we can throw the snowplow on too and make it even more of a general fund transfer. However, I don't feel all that comfortable taking that step on my own and making that recommendation. And just for your information, the general fund transfers that will be used to balance this budget will come from the tax tribunal money that we've set aside in the years past. We've held that in reserve, and it's $2.5 million approximately that we have available that we can spend. We can't spend it every year, or it isn't a sustainable amount because those tribunals have been settled. However, I think we can very safely use some of it to support our motor pool, while at the same time keeping some in reserve for unfunded liabilities and other things that we are going to be facing in the future. And I think Gary can explain it a lot better than I can, but that's the general concept. Thank you. Is that about right? I nailed it.
So we'd still have 2.1 million in that tax tribunal fund that we hold in reserve. Is that right?
We currently have, I think it's approximately 2.5 million. Once we go through the settlement process, we'll reduce that. It'll be probably closer to around $2 million. And what we would like to do is, well, what would normally happen is we would just take the reserve off of that and it just goes into unreserved fund balance in the general fund. But some options we have discussed are maybe in the general fund, whatever is left from the tribunal, we reserve that for future capital outlay, meaning the fire trucks, because Mike just mentioned the fire trucks. There's also snowplow needs, so probably over the next 8 to 9 years, we're going to need about $4 million above and beyond what the motor pool normally buys. And we just have $1 million in reserve, and either to pay for that, you know, we're probably gonna have to start looking at financing vehicles, which is something we've never wanted to do with the motor pool. So that's why we're suggesting maybe for now, we just reserve the leftover tribunal money for future capital outlay, meaning motor pool. And then hopefully we can start ratcheting up the contributions from each fund into the motor pool so that over the next 8-9 years, that money will be there to pay for those vehicles in cash.
So it seems to me like, I'm okay with this, because it seems to me like this tax tribunal money was tax revenue that we had to set aside, that we otherwise would have spent on snowplows and
Correct.
other capital equipment anyway. So it's, in a better world without tax tribunal cases, we wouldn't need to spend it now, because we would have already put that money away for that new plow, that new truck.
Yeah, that's an excellent way to look at it. That's money that probably would have been spent. Having said that, though, we do want to keep in all of our funds, but particularly the general fund, we want to keep the fund balances up as high as we can. So even though, let's say we reserve $2 million for future motor pool purchases, hopefully we can fund that in other ways so that eventually that $2 million goes into the unreserved fund balance, because believe me, we're going to need as much as we can to help cover these unfunded liabilities.
That's a huge concern of mine, is the unfunded liabilities that are, as we look at our MERS reports and things like that, really are understated because the MERS projections haven't caught up with reality.
Exactly.
But on the other hand, because this would have been money that would have been earmarked for such things as plow trucks and fire trucks and that,
Yes,
I'm
sir.
okay with it.
Yeah. Thank you.
I think a loader is a great way to spend the money. I mean, plow trucks are great, but you can only use, you know, a dedicated plow truck can only be used, 8 months of the year, but a loader can be used all year round. You can use it for plow removal, you can use it for park stuff, you can spread the money out over all your departments. So I think it's a good way, good general fund competition or tax tribunal, wherever you're gonna get the money from. I think it's a good idea. It's something that Kurt could use for multi-purpose and charge somebody else for.
Tom?
There is a program, and I don't know if it's still in existence, through FEMA, which funded fire departments. Because I used to write letters supporting the request, and you would pay 5 or 10% of the cost of the equipment. Marquette did get some grants, and I don't even know, Gary, if the program is still in existence. But you could get, I mean, it used to just blow my mind. You'd apply and you get $1 million fire truck, and you'd pay 5% or 10%. And true, it's not on our plan right now, but if that program's still in place, we should almost apply for it and get the new fire truck at $100,000 rather than $1 million. I don't even know if it's still there, but it's spending the money now might be, saving us down the road, that potential. Gary, I don't know if it's still there or not.
Yeah, I don't believe it is. We do get every year some type of FEMA grant that
Yeah.
helps out with the fire department. And in my discussions with, the previous chief and the current chief, that those grants are not available. But believe me, we'll still keep our eyes open when the
They
time
were
comes.
fabulous grants, yeah.
And just to follow up, that one of the items, I think it was a tanker truck, was in the budget for this year for the fire department. There was a grant that they applied for and did not receive. So it was a $150,000 effort, and and that was to buy a used one, wasn't it? Or yeah, the used one. So we've kind of had to scrap that based on the lack of grant funding. So I know the fire chief is looking for grants. I'm not sure about the FEMA grants, but there is money out there that we do keep an eye on.
Mike?
I've seen some grants out there in the last couple of years that have been a tremendous deal, like you're talking about. But as I read about those grants, they were restricted to rural and smaller communities for which we would not have qualified. When I look at Calumet Township, for instance, getting a new fire truck, well, that's a good deal, let's do that. And then you look into it and see that we would not qualify because we're
Well,
too
the
big.
previous ones it did, because Chicago, Detroit, everybody was getting them, okay, yeah. And we did, at that time, I wasn't part of this commission, but I know Marquette did take advantage of some of that.
But they had talked about that at the UPMML, saying that
They-
it's
they've
not
not
available
covered
to
it.
certain communities.
I got pictures of them.
Sarah?
I would be in favor probably of both, just because I think we've really neglected replacing our vehicles. When we went, those of us that toured all of the trucks and the snowplows, and to see the one snowplow that literally the floor was rotting out, that just tells me that it's time to really, try and put some money back into this. And I agree with Commissioner Conley, this is money we've set aside, and thankfully we haven't had to use more of it. So I would also be okay with purchasing both. Or not that he said both, but I'm saying both.
That would be certainly supported by myself and my preference. I guess that, like I said earlier, as long as we're going to go over budget, we might as well go over budget big. As long as we could do it one time and afford it one time with this tribunal money, I think it would certainly serve the future motor pool efforts in a positive way, because I like I said earlier, I don't think this is not going to go away. And this commission or future commissions a year or 2 or 3 down the road is going to be faced with the same question, especially of snowplows. It's one of the services that this city and this community has come to expect, and that's clean roads, clean hills, like yesterday. And it's compounded by bike paths and everything else that people expect to be plowed. And just as a, if you're in the mood and have time, if you want to stop by the maintenance motor pool building, there's 2 snowplows up on the lifts now that are being totally refurbished internally by our staff. I mean, they strip them down to bare metal, paint them, many parts. I mean, and these are only 10-year-old machines, and many parts are no, 2007, yeah, that's 10 years. Okay. I mean, many of the parts aren't made anymore. And so they're fabricating the replacement parts. It's really an impressive job. And these are just to keep our newest plows on the road. I think one of the things I tend to believe that's true is that, when they bought these plows 10 years ago, some corners were cut and it went out to the lowest bidder. And with the lowest bidder, you're not going to get a machine that's going to last more than 10 years. I mean, you'll get 10 and then refurbish. And I would recommend that if you agree to buy the plow and the front end loader, that we buy a plow that's going to last 20 years, because they do have those kind of trucks over there that were high dollar vehicles. Some of them 25 years old that look brand new because they're good quality. So.
First, just a commentary. Many a mayor in this country has been deposed, Your Honor, because the snow wasn't removed. So, you just may want to think about that. Great cities like Chicago, New York. But seriously, I know that this year the budget you proposed is based upon a transfer. And I would hope that, because I've tried to keep track of what anticipated expenditures or revenue Gary has presented to us. And that's why I think today I asked about the bond, because that's going to require us in future years to make greater payments. And so I would hope that before we do our final presentation in September, the public hearing, I'd like to see a review again of what those revenues are gonna be this year, how we're gonna do that, how we're gonna do that bond, because what we're gonna do this year is going to definitely impact a couple of the future commissions coming forward. And we're gonna commit them. And I understand that, and I understand you presented a very cogent argument as to why we should do what we're doing, but at the same time, I think we're gonna have to go out and explain that and do that. So I would just like to see down the road that we get that, what is our anticipated revenues, and also look at our potential PILT payments from other places in the city, so.
Mike?
I do see some opportunities as we keep working on this budget for increasing our revenues by reviewing our fee schedules. Back to the snowplow and motor pool maintenance. As resourceful as our motor pool staff has been, and they've been tremendous, they've kept some vehicles going that would have been long ago dead. Just like even the family budget, you have to just look at the car and say, is it worth reinvesting money? Or are we going to save that and put it into a new vehicle? And there'll be maintenance savings by going ahead with this. So we'll realize something back in future budgets. And I suspect, and maybe Eric can answer this, this is a plow truck would be more of a multi-platform. It seems to me I see plow trucks with a vacuum on top of it that we're using in the summer. Would it be one of those vehicles, or would it be parked and not used throughout the summer?
It would be a dedicated plow truck, four-wheel drive. I mean, that would be its purpose. The last plow truck that we did buy was more of a multi-use, the wing plow, where we could use it throughout the year, and that served its purpose for the time. I think that was a good move for us, but the next one that we need needs to be a four-wheel drive to serve more of the east part of town where our hills are.
Would that be Ridge Street?
Yeah, it'd be Ridge Street.
You know, people seem, their major demand is that we have good streets. Fire and police, but the streets in particular. So I would think having both the front end loader and the snowplow is not such a bad deal. Sarah?
I think we should note too that commissioners don't get their streets plowed first. It's not how this goes. But one comment I have heard, and I wish I would have thought about this when Ian was presenting, but people have said to me, when the fire department goes out to an accident, is there any way they can take a different vehicle, a smaller vehicle, instead of taking the big fire truck out every time, when often it's not quite a critical situation? Everyone loves the fire department, but I think when they see the fire truck go so often, and maybe it's just a little fender bender or something, I think maybe what they're asking has some merit. I don't know.
Yeah, no, I have shared the same question and concerns, and I can't give you the best answer. I mean, I too watched Rescue 51 when it was on TV back in the 70s, 80s. Does anybody else remember that? 60s, I'm sorry. It was in color, so it must have been the 70s. Anyway, the rescue truck went out with the paramedics, and the fire trucks always came. And I believe there's some protocol that, an emergency protocol that requires the which vehicle and which use response. But I assure you that's something I'll keep an eye on as we move forward.
Mike?
Isn't part of that answer because those firefighters are on call for any emergency, and if they had to return to the station to pick up the firefighting equipment instead of just the rescue equipment, it would increase the response time. And that's why you see a fire truck parked in front of the library at the open house, because they have to be able to respond from that site.
I believe you're correct. Yes, that is correct.
Would the front end loader then be able to shovel out, where there's somebody who complains about the snow in his driveway, would we be able to use the new front end loader for that?
Yes, and probably your sidewalk too. I'm just kidding. I believe that's Kurt can answer that.
Thank you for the comment, by the way. If there's one call I get all the time, 24/7, it's a plow went by and put snow in my driveway. You try and be nice, you answer a phone call right away, you explain to them that, you know, when it snows, we have routes we do. You know, it's one of those things. Do we take, every once in a while, in special circumstances, you know, we will send out a front-end loader. But we gotta be careful because by sending a front-end loader out over to that driveway or that intersection, it takes away from doing the main street. And one thing I want to add too, that I gotta give so much credit to the motor pool staff and you know, what they've done. I think you guys touched on it, to keep these plows going, or all vehicles in that manner. And another thing too, as you know, speaking on behalf of the whole Public Works Department, they take very pride in their job. And when we don't have the tools to do it, it sort of reflects on them. So if we only have 4 plows operating and it's a snowstorm, you know, then we tend to, the level of service sort of tapers off. So by doing some of these decisions right now is gonna, you know, help, you know, maintain the level of service that residents expect.
Pete?
Living downstate for 5 years, you guys do a great job moving snow around. And I don't like to say that word in the summer. The white stuff in the summer. Lived downstate for 5 years, and they used to move the white stuff into the middle of the road, then come back later and try and clear it away. So the guys do a great job clearing the town, get it done. And I don't like to hear that word, white stuff. I don't like to just say white stuff. It's better to say white stuff instead of that other word in the middle of summer. And I joke with boaters that we lift all the time. Over the years, we've learned it's always falling white stuff. We pull them out in the fall. It's always falling white stuff. We put them back in the spring or summer. You just never know when the white stuff's going to come. So, great job, all your guys.
I guess that ends the Public Works portion of the budget. And once again, I'd like to, you know, thank, you know, the city manager and, you know, Gary, you know, his birthday was the other day. Yesterday, so he spent fine tuning the budget. But anyways, the whole staff and then all the support from the commission.
Well, thank you. Thank you to Dennis also. You two guys and your staff has done a lot of work here. And hopefully everything went well. Okay, any other questions? Seeing none, we're going to move on to our last public comment. Again, chance for residents to address the commission. Does anybody wish, I'm going to open public comment. Does anyone wish to address the commission? Anyone? Seeing none, we're going to close public comment. We're going to go to comments from the commission. We'll start with Commissioner Frazier. Any comments?
No comments.
Commissioner Cambenzi?
I'd just like to thank everyone today who presented and for being very diligent and certainly fiscally responsible with the budgets. I appreciate it, and whatever we can do to help, certainly let us know in terms of how to get the information out there and help you guys.
Commissioner Conley, any comments?
Nothing further.
Commissioner Baldini?
Nothing right now.
Nothing from me. City manager? City manager? None? We are adjourned.
Or not